Hello, guys. Can you hear me? Let's see. It's a little different today. Let me see what I have here. Gallery. All right. Gallery view. Okay, cool. Now I can see everybody. Excellent. Yes. Cool. Awesome. How are you guys doing? Let's start this party, man. I wanna sculpt something. I was on vacation for some time, enjoying some time with the family, and I'm excited to actually start something new. So I hope you guys are in the same boat. Let me just first off, like, I just installed new drivers for my computer here, and I'm just giving it a shot. You know, it's like I put together this new computer, and I have the other one right here on the side just in case something goes wrong. You know, but I want to give it a shot and try to do this class with this new computer just because it's going to be a little bit faster for me to show you results if I need to do some render right in front of you instead of like waiting too much. So I hope it's okay. I installed like some studio drivers, and it's NVIDIA 1070, an old one. And apparently the studio drivers are causing some stuttering in ZBrush for some reason. So I tried the game drivers just to see if it works. But let's see, hoping for the best, but I have a backup plan just in case. So I'm gonna start by sharing my screen here. Let's see if I can do this. Screen 2, okay, so let's try this one. Can you guys see my windows? Yeah? All right, so let's see. Let me just, so today I'm gonna be talking about, first like an introduction about like how things gonna work, and point you guys to some of the files. We're gonna set up some stuff, you know, like since the last class in January, I started actually using the ACES color space, which is really cool. You know, you have like a much richer color to play with. You know, if you want to do like post-processing stuff, it's pretty cool. So I'm gonna introduce you guys to that stuff, and there are a couple of like recent tutorials actually talking about that on YouTube, which is really cool. But I'm gonna show like how I set up all my system in here. ZBrush, what's the preferences I use in there. Same for Maya. Normally, like in those classes, we have people with a lot of experience and some people who don't have a lot of experience, but they are really eager to learn. And so, I mean, like what I'm going to be showing you here is nothing is set in stone, right? Like it's basically like my own pipeline, the way I feel more comfortable working with. And but by all means, like you can extrapolate anything I say here. For example, if I'm going to be torturing you guys like sculpting detail by hand and stuff, by all means, if you feel like it's a waste of time or something, you know, like if you want to use the texture XYZ or whatever you want to do, I just say go for it, you know. And a lot of you guys are like much better than I am, like when it comes to lighting and modeling, whatever it is. I tell people like I'm a jack of all trades and a master of nothing, you know, master of none of them. So I just do a lot of things well enough to produce a result at the end, you know. And I think that's the philosophy, is just like try to come up with like, you know, results, create something cool at the end. So we're gonna start by doing this. Today, I actually opened the access for you guys that you probably have access now, which is like, let me just move this over here. So this is the website, right? And if you go to your dashboard in there, you should now see this March 2020 here. And then if you just click on it, you should go to the, you know, similar to what you had like in the other classes. So this is just like, obviously, this is like a copy from the previous classes. So it's just like a skeleton from like previous class, basically. So it's like it's just a temporary thing, you know. All the text is just temporary, but this is not temporary. So this is basically like what we have in terms of references. We can add much more in here, but there are a bunch of like very good books. I owe each one of them. They're really excellent books. And then here you're gonna find out that there's one of them, if you compare to the previous classes, there's one link that I changed. It's this one called GigaPen in here, which is basically like it was the Daniel Boschung, like a super high res pictures for like facial detail reference. And apparently it's crashing if you try to access directly. So I changed to this one here, which is basically the same thing. It's just a different interface. So if you click that link, you're gonna get to this, basically his profile is the same guy, but it's not his website. So this is all living inside of GigaPen. The cool thing is that he has like more recent pictures in here. or at least like newer than the ones he used to have in his website. For example, this lady wasn't there, you know, those guys not there. They're all kind of like new. This guy was already there. But it's pretty cool. You get like more variation. Now I have like 16 pages of this. And if you're not familiar with it, this is the best reference you can get like for, you know, facial detail, basically. If you get this lady here, if you just click the image, you can just, you know, max the whole thing here, maximize it. And then you can use like the wheel of your mouse to just like zoom in forever, right? And you're gonna get to some very, very juicy detail in there. And it's very cool to see all this stuff like in all its glory. You know, it's like the peach fuzz we're gonna be doing later. You know, it's like everything is so complex, like, and basically like if you want to go for something this realistic, let's say like to see something like from this up close, this is a project in itself, right? Because we are building a full portrait, what we're going to try to do is to capture the impression of that person the best we can. So it's not like we're going to be able to capture all the tiny little details in here. Not even with texture XYZ, you're going to be able to capture everything, although it's being captured from an actual skin. It's just too complex, you know. It's like there is a lot involved in an organic form like that, you know. So what we can try to do is to actually emulate this stuff by creating some of the detail, so we can actually see from up close, right? It can hold up from up close, but definitely not something like we're going to be able to recreate nature, right? So yeah, this is going to be basically our main reference point. So let's go back here and see the other references we have in there. So we have this one, which is like the last, second to last one here. We have this one for eye caustics, which is kind of cool. You have like a, oh, interesting. This one was working before. I'm not sure why it's not working now. Huh. This one is just a movie showing like the eye caustics traveling, you know, across the iris. We're gonna check that one. It was working before, definitely. So let's see. Let me just go back here. Let me just open another window. Actually, let's do this one. Just get my NVIDIA here. Okay, so let's go back right there. So we're going to be talking about this. I already kept the link in there. We're going to be doing, you know, installing the ACES first, and then we're going to keep like setting up all our scenes and everything. If you are not familiar with Maya, it's very important that we set up everything correctly from the get-go. Otherwise, it becomes a giant mess. So here's the thing. I'm going to keep separate like that. So you have like, this is from one of my previous students. It's kind of like unfair to call people students because those guys kick ass way before they took my class. And then, so it's not like he learned anything from this class. This actually was done before my class, but he has this very cool Artstation page. You can take a look. It's like tips about likeness, right? Not necessarily going to be talking specifically about likeness during this class the whole time, because my intention since the past two classes is to actually create some character, like a fictitious character, right? Like the Native American guy and this African guy, roughly based on some references I find online. Normally, like with very low resolution, so I have like plenty of freedom to create on top of it. But if you're going for likeness, this is an excellent manual. You know, it's like looking for unusual angles. You know, there's like the camera settings, right? Like, you know, it's very important to be able to differentiate like between like a camera lens of like maybe like a 50 or 85 and a 200, for example. You know, it's going to make much flatter. So it's a good read. You know, it's like this whole tutorial is very cool, and he's very good with his likeness as well. He's really good. So yeah, just go through those other references in here. You're going to see some stuff about the microgeometry. That's the micro breakup right in between the displacement map we're going to be creating. You have an extra layer of breakup, so it helps with the specular. That adds more complexity to it. You know, there is the Palomita who also took the class. She's an excellent artist, and she has this compilation. Here is the gigantic Google Photos you know, repository in there. And then basically like she has everything collected. Everything she ever collected is there. So like you're gonna have references for eyes, lips, skin from up close, all kinds of stuff. yeah, it's acting a little funny, a little slow in there, but yeah, it should load soon. And then, so for now, let's just start, and then I'm gonna be talking about the rest of like the plan as I go. But for now, let's just set up those files here. So the first thing you're gonna do, they're gonna point you to this manual. So if you search for Arnold 5, let's say ACES color in your Google, Arnold 5 basically like is going to direct you to the Arnold render manual, online manual, which is very complete, by the way. So if you click that one, the first link, that's going to be the ACES workflow. And then if you scroll down, you're going to scroll all the way around here. It says workflow, right? And then under workflow, you're going to have a link. So if you click that link, you're going to go to this website in here, right? Like, which is the GitHub. And then this is basically the stuff you need to download. You can, for example, like you can go back one level in here and then just click like clone or download. And you can download the whole thing. It's going to basically download everything. But you don't need everything. All you need is this one here. So once you get the clone downloaded, everything is going to be inside of like a zip file. And then when you unzip it, all you need is this folder here that's called ACES 103, which is basically like they're saving all the versions in here, right? So this one here, when you click on it, you're going to see those 5 files, actually 3 folders and 2 files, right? If I open my own drive in here, so let's take a look first here. So if I go to F, which is basically what I'm going to be working on, and personal projects. So I have like all my personal projects, each one of the models I create, I always put it in here. And then I have a folder that I created called ACES config. You see right there? So if I double click on it, you're gonna see it's exactly the same structure. So this is the extraction of that folder into this folder here. Basically, like you can create a folder with the same name if you want, ACES. As long as the structure is preserved, it can be any name and any place in the hard drive too, you know. So I basically like did what I said, you know, click the top folder in there and then clone or download it. And then once I had the 103 inside of my zip file, I unzipped it into this folder right here called ACES config. Can literally live in any place in your hard drive you want, okay? So that's how we're going to start it. So the second thing I'm going to show is this one here. So I created this folder today called Asian Tribal Lady because my intention is to model an Asian tribal lady for this class. So the references I picked, they're kind of random. And as usual, I only pick stuff like they're not super high resolution from the internet. They're just like cool faces, you know, it's like sculpturally speaking. I really go for like faces that are kind of like striking, you know, people who have like interesting features. So this lady, for example, is very interesting, right? Like how long her nose is. The shape of the eyes is very interesting. The color of the eyes is very interesting. You know, it's like it's some kind of like, I don't know if it's cataract or something else. You know, it's like, you know, there's this little glow around the eyes, but you know, I noticed this with a lot of people. There is a term for it, I forgot. But she's pretty interesting. My least favorite thing to do is like is to model accessories because it takes forever sometimes. But as much as possible, I'm going to try to incorporate some stuff if I go for her, for example. Now, I have like some very different other faces here. This one I picked just because of the profile. I just thought it was such a beautiful, interesting profile. Like the structure of the face is so striking. This one here as well. A lot of history, right? Like all those wrinkles and everything. One thing that some people asked me in the past when I was sculpting just like old people, I went through this, you know, it's like a phase of just sculpting a lot of old people. It's because I was trying to pay homage to some of the masters, the people who inspired me. And turns out they're all white, wrinkled people. So I went for that reason, not anything else specifically. But in terms of teaching about like secondary and tertiary forms, there's nothing better than, you know, sculpting someone old. It's just because you have so much to do, you know, it's like it's all this interesting history baked into the face, you know. And then from time to time, you know, I go for someone younger. For example, there is a class from last year from that I sculpted my wife. much simpler in terms of details. It's just it's much more subtle, right? Like everything, you cannot hide anything. But in terms of sculpture, it's always more interesting, you know. It's like, to me at least, I have a fascination with old age, maybe because everybody in my family died so young. So I'm fascinated with it. So I'm probably gonna go for this, you know, for someone very wrinkly, but especially someone who has a very interesting bone structure, you know. There is one here that's very striking. This one here is a very striking one, like, you know, the orbital bone, and here, like how, you know, evident it is in there. And then, you know, the very asymmetrical nature of the face as well. It's very striking to me. And then there's this lady here, which is like very, very interesting too. And obviously, I'm just observing the subject from the standpoint of a sculpture, right? But if you dig deeper in terms of like the emotion, all this stuff, you can only wonder what's going on with this person. You know, it's like if she's sick, or you know, it's like what kinds of stories she saw during her life, right? So it's interesting to chip a little bit about like the subject, you know, because when you're creating a character, especially if you get inspiration from a character that exists, to create someone different, but using this as a base, for example, you want to make sure you capture that similar emotion, you know, something that you can feel when you look at the person. I always tell, like, the artists are storytellers, right? But when you're doing a portrait, it's that thing about you know, how you tell a story with a single portrait, and it's all about the emotion and the body expression, the facial expression, you know, and the things you can capture in there. There is a part of it that's very technical. It's how we're gonna assemble this face to look like there is an actual skull inside of it, right? Like, so we're gonna be sculpting the landmarks and things like that. But there is a lot of subtleties that go a little bit beyond the technical aspects, and it's basically like it's going to be from person to person how you're able to, you know, to capture that that soul from that character. But you know, there are lots of tricks I'm going to, you know, tell you guys as much as I can to yeah, to help you guys to create a similar effect, you know. And then that's basically what I have. Like, it's just those ladies. You see, like, they're very different between each other. But that's what I'm going to be using as a starting point. So I might choose one like randomly, maybe this lady here because of the skull or something. And then I'm going to start the sketch tonight. I normally start a sketch in the first night. It looks like shit. And then next day we keep refining it, and eventually have something that we can project to a topology, right? So let's just go back in here for a second. So in terms of folders, so far what we created was just the ACES config that's in there. And I created a folder with the name of the character or the project you're gonna give, right? So in this case, it's the Asian tribal lady. So let's open Maya first. Let's set up some stuff here. It's loading in there. And also I have to open ZBrush. Let's just wait for a second. And while it's opening in there, so the way I normally do those classes, I have a little bit of a, not a little bit, it's almost like an hour-long monologue, right? So I'm actually trying to use this time as much as I can to pack with information. So I try to squeeze as much information as I can in the first hour. And then the second hour, I just open, you know, and you guys ask anything you need, you know. If it's something related to the classes themselves, I'm happy to just open any file you guys want. For example, if you saw something I posted in the past and you're curious about how that was done, you know, or if you're doing the classes like the previous ones, right, like the pre-recorded, and you are curious about something, just ask me. And if you have that time in there, I can just open the files and basically like expand everything. You know, it's like if there is a shader network, let's expand on it. My intention with those classes is always to reveal everything. So if I'm using a shader network, I open the shader network based like node by node, all the settings, so you can copy them, you know, and I can do the renders too as well, so you can see that actually everything is legit. And then just like really not keeping like any secrets. If you guys are here, you know, it's like you're paying for those classes, you know, it's like it's a lot of information that you get for it. You get actually 4 classes, and you know, instead of 1. but and it's not I mean, it's not expensive for the amount of stuff you get, but it's still like it's a good chunk of money you guys are paying. So I want to make sure that you guys get what you're paying for and some more. So so here we are in Maya. If you're not familiar with it, some of you guys use different software. So this is basically like the main interface of Maya, excluding this last one here. This is basically like I created this little shortcut, which I have like actually a tab, and I have all my main shortcuts in there. The first thing you're gonna ask you guys to do, if you never did it, in the corner here, if you're using the latest Maya 2019 or 2020, there's the workspace, and I normally switch to interactive groom. And when you do that, it automatically creates this, this layout for you, which shows like the XGen in here ready for you to populate it. And then you have your outliner in there as well. Channel boxes, you know, we could create layers. So it's very convenient. I like this layout quite a lot. So we are not going to be talking about the scale specifically today, but once you have the sketch done, we're going to have to make sure that the sketch, the head is basically like world scale. So we're going to make sure that the head has like an average size for a head, because everything is going to be dependent on it. You know, the scale of the subsurface scattering is going to be dependent on that. And everything we're going to be able to refer to real world examples of stuff. If you find like medical papers online, you know, you're going to be able to do that. So so let's start by just showing like the essential stuff here in Maya. I'm not going to go through a whole lot of stuff. It's just really what we need for the class itself, right? So you're going to notice if I try to open a file here, click this little folder, it's going to point me to a folder here, right? And you see it's pointing to an old project, Dick Smith, because I was actually working on this file. Like I like revisiting old models and trying to improve them. I'm working the likeness actually. So it's pointing straight to that spot, right? You can set any folder in the computer if you want to set that as the main folder for your project by clicking the set project in here, right? I can go and pick any folder in my drive. But before you do this, we actually have to create like an environment so our scenes can live in there. To show you something here, if you click this little guy right here, there's a little, you know, gear in there. If you click that one, that's basically the render settings, right? And you see that by default, if you don't have anything set, this path is going to point to you know, to a random folder, probably like in your documents or something. And you see mine is pointing to this folder here, Dick Smith images, right? But by default, this folder didn't exist. So how we create it? Well, we have to create an environment. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Project Window, File, Project Window, and then you're going to see this, right? And you see, this is like the names of the folders that Maya expects to see. For example, one that's very important is this source images in here. By default, Maya searches for all the textures you save and you're trying to load to your file, to your scenes from the source images. Obviously, you can point to any place in the hard drive, right? Like, but let's say like if you're trying to make a portable version of this whole scene, it's always good if you save like in what Maya searches for first. So this is basically where you're going to keep all your textures, displacement maps, whatever it is, right? So let's set up a new environment here. So you see it's pointing to Dick Smith. So let's go to something else here. Let's click New, and then it opens up this whole thing. So if I go to this one here, I'm going to go back one level. And then I'm going to click, let's see, Asian tribal lady, this one. Select. So you see it pointed in there. Actually, this is if I didn't have anything created. So let's redo this. I'm going to just cut this from here. And I'm going to paste it right here. So that way is actually going to create a project, which is already created. So I'm just repeating the name in here inside of the personal projects in here. So let's see what happens. So if I click Accept. So remember that folder that I showed you guys? I only had one folder inside of it that was the references folder now. So now look what Maya did. It created all those folders for us. They are all empty, right? There's no files in there. Maybe there's some temporary stuff they're gonna save eventually, but so far it's a pretty empty folder. So right now what we did so far, we created a folder called references, and I put my reference in there. I did this process of coming again, like very quickly. So File, set project window, and then unlock this one by clicking New. Go to the root of the folder, not the one you just created, right? Basically, like this is the personal projects in here, and this Asian tribal lady is in there. So I can set this one up as the main one. And then here, I'm going to give that name, right? Asian lady or whatever, a tribal lady. And then it's going to create for you that folder automatically. And then it's going to create all of those inside of it. Here in this case, I actually repeated the name that I had already for that folder just because it was already created. So it just accepted and added all this stuff inside of it. So let's see what happens now. So if I click this open scene now it's pointing straight to the Asian tribal lady scenes, which is the folder where you're going to save all your Maya scenes, all your working scenes, right? The same way when you click this one here for the render settings, now it's pointing to the correct folder, which is the expected one is tribal lady images, right? So if you give a name in here, let's see, tribal lady A. Now you see I already show you right there how it's going to call the file. So one thing I normally do, because I render multiple angles, you know, it's normally like I render overnight a bunch of different angles. So that's why, you know, when I post on Instagram is all those different angles. So I like setting an animation for the camera. And then to do that, it's good if you switch this from name extension single frame to name and then number and extension. So the second one here. So now it's going to show you right there, tribal lady A 001 to 0010, right? And here's where you're going to define the animation length. So basically, like I'm rendering by default here 10 different frames, right? So I'm just going to keep that the way it is right there. So since we are here, let's keep going with Maya and set everything up first. And then obviously, as we bring the model in, there are a bunch of other settings we're going to have to do. But so far, so good, right? We just set the project. We are here. So give a name in there. It can be any name you want just to set up like as the first actual images you're going to be rendering in the future. And then the name, number, and extension. And then here you can keep default. Renderable camera is just perspective because we don't have any camera created so far. It's just the default. And then for presets, you can get like square, for example, like 1K. When I render for Instagram, I used actually 900 by 900, so it's not too demanding. And that's basically what I use for resolution in there. So, and then let's see, render options, nothing here. Scene assembly, nothing here. So basically that's all the settings I do for this tab. So like the resolution, you pick anything you want. Frame, and then this guy. Image format, I'm keeping EXR, so no problem there. And then let's go to Arnold render now. Oh, another thing about Arnold, a little disclaimer. If by any chance your Maya 2020, when you sign subscription or whatever, if it's the free version or whatever you're using there, if it doesn't come with the latest Arnold, you can download Arnold. You can go to, if you just type like Arnold, let's see, area download, something like that. So Autodesk Arnold downloads here, right? So the thing about this one is that you have to log in with your area credentials. So that's the only thing you're gonna need. And then you're gonna be able to download stuff from here. So you see like there's Windows in there. There's Maya 2020 or 2019 if that's the case. And that should give you the latest Arnold. So if you install that guy, probably like he's gonna ask me to log in or something here, but I'm not gonna do it. But yeah, you're gonna have to log in and then download it. And then obviously you close Maya first, install it. And then once you install, you're gonna get the latest stuff. And we need that because we need the Render Walk version 2 to be able to do nicer renders. So here we are at the Arnold second tab now, to the render settings second tab. And then basically this by default is just like a very preview, super noisy settings that we use. It's just like super fast to render this way. But I normally change this for something like, it's all dependent, okay? Basically like this is gonna multiply, I believe like those guys multiply with the first one. So you can change this independently, depending on what you wanna do with your scenes. So for example, if you're rendering caustics in Arnold are very demanding. So we're gonna need like more samples to be able to represent like a nice smooth effect instead of like super noisy. And in that case, some of those things are gonna be affected. For example, like the transmission, you're gonna have to crank this number higher if you're going for caustics. Probably the caustic is gonna be projected if it hits, for example, like the eye lid. You're probably gonna have to increase your subsurface scattering as well to get a little bit more like a noise less in there. But I would say like by default, if you use something like just for render tests, quick ones that simply don't suck, you see like the maximum amount of like samples in here is like 180, right? So let's crank this to like 6 for this one. And then you can do like 3 for each one of those. And then now we have like 1200. Still like very, you know, fast to render this way, but definitely still gonna get noise, you know, you're still gonna get noise under this. The noise starts getting away as you go to like 8 and then or 10. If you want like a super nice render, you can crank to 14, you know, but all of this adds more and more render time, right? So it's up to you. I would say like just for first tests, it's gonna be noisy, but you can use like 6, for example. And then there are a bunch of things here, like you can do the render progressive. So that means like it's gonna keep refining each pass. So that gives you an option to stop at any time and just save that file at the current state. Or you can just like leave it unchecked and it's just gonna be rendering, you know, it's like gonna kind of like do a preview render and then refine a little bit and then start actually doing the actual render. Adaptive sampling, this can be helpful. I normally don't use it, but I can see like it can be very useful. You can set up like a maximum amount of anti-alias. Let's say like the one I mentioned before was 14. You can possibly use 14 for a maximum here. And then if it needs less, it's gonna adapt, you know, as I can eventually try to get you like a more optimized render time in there. For clamping here, I normally just like, I just use everything like default. So like clamp AA samples, that's all. But sometimes, you know, it's like to prevent, you know, those fireflies, sometimes get some artifacts. You can try to prevent them by playing with those slides. I would suggest to go to the Arnold manual online and see exactly what they do. And then for the filter, this one is a cool one. I used to use a lot of those guys, for example, like the Black Man Harry's here or Cat Rom, because they gave me more sharpness overall. But then reading the manual, it's almost like you can force, for example, Gaussian to be sharper if you go lower. So for example, if you put like 1.2 here, it's going to be a much sharper render. But over time, I learned that if you go too sharp with the render, what happens is that when the sharpness hits like those wrinkles and pores and everything, it kills the effect of the subsurface. You know, it's almost like it becomes a little bit more rocky than it should be. You should have like a very you know, waxy feel to it, to an extent, right? Obviously, it doesn't have to look like wax, but it has to have that feel that we are just looking at those high resolution renders or pictures, you know. Let's see, Sophie here. I mean, like you have to get this feel, right? Like it cannot be something, you see like how scattery it is when you look from up close, right? It's very, very scattery. So if you use too much sharpness, all this stuff starts getting like too, it almost looks like a solid and not too organic anymore, you know? So that's why nowadays I kind of like keep around like 2 or even like 1.8 if I need a little bit more sharpness. And I let the sharpness be controlled by the, you know, at the end of the day with post-processing. So I don't worry about that. And under advanced, the only one I use here is the auto bump in SSS. And this one is a cool thing that Arnold has that we're going to be exploring as we start working with, you know, bringing the model in and looking for, you know, it's like if you want to try to do like a nice render, I would always encourage to use the auto bump in SSS, but because what happens is that, let's say we are working with HD geometry, which is going to be the case. And then if you're working with HD geometry, imagine you have to try to represent, let's say 70, 80, 90, 100 million polygons, right, in your model. And then what Arnold does, which is very smart, you can ask Arnold, for example, to subdivide the model a lot in order to accommodate all that detail, right? And then it's going to be super heavy to render. And if you don't have enough RAM, you forget about it because it's going to crash. Or you can just say, tell Arnold, no, just subdivide 3 times for me or 4 times. And then what Arnold's going to do is going to subdivide up to that point, and anything that it could not accommodate in terms of representing the detail that's in the displacement map, Arnold's going to shift towards a bump map, but not a bump map that you're going to be able to see. It's just like a render time thing, you know. It's during the render time, he's going to create like this virtual bump. And then that bump is going to represent all the super fine detail stuff without having to subdivide the model a lot, you know. But obviously, if it's a lot of complex surfaces, especially like those bigger wrinkles that we're going to be doing for those old ladies, I might have to actually crank that slide from between probably like not 3, but definitely between 4 and 5 to be able to accommodate everything, because we want to make sure that it's actually displacing the geometry instead of like not breaking the, you know, the silhouette at all. And at the end, it's going to look just like a bump if you don't do that. So I'm going to have to crank between like 4 and 5 probably. But so that's why we use the auto bump in SSS, because otherwise the subsurface scattering is not calculated on top of this micro detail that was shifted towards the bump. You know, it just calculates the subsurface for the displacement map up to that point. So if you use 3 for subdivision levels, that's basically what's going to do, you know. But if you have this guy on, now you got a message here. For example, if you click on it, let's see, enabling this checkbox right there in the bottom here, you're going to see enabling this checkbox triples shader evaluation in SSS. So it's definitely going to be more time consuming. I would leave this one just for a final render, for example, right? But it's pretty cool if you're doing like some tests and you really want to see it, to keep it on. For ray depth, I mean, like that's basically like the basics of it is if you have like a light ray try to cross a surface, right? Like you have a transparent surface, like you know, it's like we're gonna need the iris to be visible, right? So we need to make sure that the cornea is transparent, and then we have to make sure we have enough ray depth for the light to penetrate the cornea. And then, you know, it's like actually it has to go in and then come out as well. So like you need enough bounces in there for the light to be able to travel and to reveal what's inside. You can do a test, for example, if you have like diffuse at 1 and you have like 2 objects with transparency, one inside of the other one and a third one inside of that, you're going to see that you're not going to be able to render the third one if you don't have enough rays going towards transmission, for example. So transmission here is set by default to 8, which is really good. But, you know, good practice. I mean, like I normally crank those values a little bit higher. So, you know, it's like you can, depending on what you're going to do with the model, obviously, but, you know, volume as well, right? Like if you're doing something with volumetric lights and things like that. But otherwise, it's just like, yeah, not going to change that much. Environment, nothing here, unless you want to create like an atmospherical effect. No motion blur, not going to change that. Lights, same. Textures. So for textures, this is an interesting one. Back in the day with Mental Ray, you needed to create a kind of like a conversion of the maps to a map that would be much less memory intense. So basically, like he converted to this, I don't remember the extension actually back in the day, but it basically splits a map, let's say a 4K map, in tiny little chunks, of a file, right? So he reads those little chunks one at a time as it renders, instead of like rendering, basically like loading the entire file into memory. We're gonna be dealing here with the 8K maps, if your machine can afford. My machine, the old one had 96 gigs, so I was able to actually put a lot of maps. But I understand like you can do a lot with 4K maps if that's the case. You know, if it's too much. So so basically what this does is a similar thing. It converts those textures to TX textures, which I believe is a similar process of like chopping this model, textures into tiny little chunks that are loaded in memory as you render. So one little chunk at a time to save memory. So I'm gonna leave this one up to you guys to use it. The only thing that's inconvenient is that once the texture is assigned to a model, if you don't force it to reload those things and to create those maps again, the new TX, doesn't matter what you do in ZBrush, for example, you paint a new pass, like for the color, you try to apply that to Maya, and Maya all of a sudden is stuck to the old texture because it has to be refreshed every time. Just because of that, I keep it off, right? So I just like, I don't auto convert, and I don't use the existing TX textures. But like I said, if you're careful enough, you can keep using them as long as you reload them every time you apply, you assign a new texture, you know. Subdivision, I don't change this one. This is more than enough in there. But yeah, let's say, for example, like you have this auto convert textures to TX and use existing TX textures. There is a tab in here, a menu item called Arnold, and you're gonna have access to everything you're gonna do related to Arnold with this menu. So we're gonna create our lights in here, flush caches, for example, like if you wanna make sure that everything is reloaded, you can actually delete like all the textures at once, you know, all the lights or everything at the same time. And you have utilities in here, and you have a TX manager right there, right? So this guy here can actually refresh the texture. So if you assign stuff, you know, to make sure that things are being recreated every time. So yeah, that's why I keep it off. At least like if your machine is not able to handle, I would say keep it on, but otherwise you can keep it off, you know. And then further here, we're gonna go to system. Another system, the other thing I change here normally, I mean, I don't have a good GPU at this point. You see, it's my GeForce 1070, which is my old card, which is like 8 gigabytes. So not great for GPU rendering in Arnold, at least not at this point. Arnold is very, very weak and very buggy at this point. So V-Ray is a better choice if you want to do GPU render at this point. But it has the option here, right? GPU. And then it has an option also that if you switch to GPU, for example, instead of like giving an error, you can switch to CPU. So basically, like he works with the GPU, and then if it doesn't have enough power for that, it switches to CPU and keeps rendering. But I'm gonna tell you, like my scenes are too complex for this stuff. It's about 16 to 18 gigs each one of those models, and then I don't have enough memory to handle that. So I'm waiting for a good contact of mine who is in touch with the NVIDIA, and I might be able to score some cards to do some tests, you know. So maybe like a couple of quadros, whatever. That would be very cool to test because those come with 24 gigs each. And that would be a dream to me. But anyway, for now, we're going to be using CPU. And the bucket size is basically like, it is what it says in there. It's like each one of the buckets, when you render, you see those little squares, kind of like render each one. Normally, if you have like a smaller value here, that means that it's going to be rendering faster that little chunk, so you can see the results a little bit faster in the small bits, right? But I did a couple of tests. For example, in my sweet spot was around 32. In the past, I would use like 16 here, which is the minimum, just to see like tiny little chunks. But I did some tests, and 16 was slower to render than 32 for me. So that means that if I have 64 threads, like I do in this computer, this new computer has 32 cores and then 64 threads. That means I'm gonna get 64 little processors rendering one little chunk at a time. So like all of them gonna be rendering, each one is gonna pick one little chunk of 32 by 32 pixels. So that's what it is in there. And then this AOV here is basically like if you're gonna render in passes. So you can add like all kinds of stuff. You can add like a depth Z, for example, or RGBA, or like a ambient occlusion. You can do all kinds of different passes if you're planning to comp your image at the end, right? It's very easy to use. Just like click on them and just like click this one and adds in there. It's gonna give you all the options in there. You can use denoise and all that stuff. But I'm gonna tell you, I try to render everything straight out of Arnold without comping anything. So I try my best to get things like to work as good as I can inside of Arnold. And then I spit just a single image that I'm gonna be just doing small tweaks like color correction or whatever in post, but without being too concerned about the other stuff. I try to go, you know, so I can do multiple renders, and then it needs more specular instead of like cheating in a way, right? I try to just like fix that in the paint itself, because I want to make sure that I can use this model under different lighting situations and everything. And, you know, without having to tweak like in post every single time. So I try to do that way, but you have the option here. Also refer to the manual. They have a very complete, you know, part in there about this. And another one that I didn't use in the past that I learned to use more and more is this last part here that's called diagnostics. And this one here, let's say like you're rendering your image, and it's just like it takes forever because you have all your textures plugged and everything. You can at any time just turn off. You can just like ignore textures, ignore shaders, whatever it is. And when you render, everything goes away. The only one that you cannot turn off, basically, like if you're using subsurface scattering, if you turn this one off, the model is going to be completely black. So make sure you're using, you know, it's like maybe you can switch if it's just for a test from subsurface scattering. Maybe you can bring all the way to 0 and then just, you know, just crank the ambient in there. But yeah, this is very useful. There's another way I can show you guys how to do like quick tests just for you know, diagnostics of your scenes. But that's basically what it is. So yeah, all those steps we just covered. So the scene is pretty much like set to start a new model here. The last thing I'm gonna go do in Maya here before we start doing some poke around in ZBrush is go to this guy here, which is like, you see this little guy running there with a little gear. That's the same shortcut you're gonna find in Windows, Settings and Preferences, and then Preferences, right? So that's basically what we're gonna do. There's a lot of stuff you can do here, like tweak your undo levels, whatever it is. But what's gonna be important for us here is to go and set up like our color management. And first we're gonna go to settings in here. And under settings, it's where we're gonna set up our scale for the scene. I believe that Arnold expects to use like centimeters and millimeters, maybe it's millimeters actually. But then for measuring the head, sometimes I start with the inches and then just like plug the you know, the numbers in there in inches. And then later on, if you need to switch to millimeters or everything, then it's fine, it's up to you. But for us to set up like a world scale, I would say like either we can use centimeters if you're familiar with it, you know, if it's metric system in your country, or if you're more familiar with inches, which I became more familiar since I moved to the United States 15 years ago, so kind of more used to it. So you can do that as well. And it's going to be very useful to set up like the real world scale first. And then from that point on, you can switch up. And then the next one is going to be the color management. So you see, like by default, this is what Arnold, what Maya gives to you. So there's enable color management. There's nothing plugged in there, right? And then by default, you have a couple of interesting things here. For example, you can set up rules that's gonna speed up your process, for example, like so you don't need to convert your textures every time to a different type of color space, right? So for example, TX file, it's already, those are presets in here. The TX file, if you load any TX file, Maya automatically converts to RAW. So it's gonna set up the input color space to RAW, very important. HDRI, same thing, is gonna be RAW. So like if it's a displacement map, right? A displacement map like an EXR map or a TIFF map that's a raw format, right? That comes from ZBrush, or HDRI or TX, they're all in RAW. And by default here, everything else is sRGB, right? So that's the regular color space that we use when you're using Maya. But we're gonna be doing something a little bit more fancy because we're gonna be trying to use some ACEs. And remember, I created a little folder. I already explained to you guys what you have to unzip, so it's already there. So let's do this. So you see there is a OCIO config path. So I'm gonna just click this folder. I'm gonna go back in here a few times, and I'm gonna click that folder, and I'm gonna click this config OCIO in there. I'm gonna open it. So you already sampled there. So remember before we had just like sRGB. But now look what we have here. We have ACES CG, which is the one I'm gonna be using, right? And then view transform, you can keep it like sRGB in there. So the rendering space is gonna be ACES CG. So see, if I click this one here now, use configuration, so it's gonna be loading a bunch of stuff. So you're gonna see it's gonna populate with more stuff now. So it's loading because those files are pretty large. Like I think like downloading that's like over a gigabyte or something. So now look at this stuff. So you get much more stuff now in here. And now instead of like simply sRGB, I have sRGB aces, right? So now the first one, ACCG, sRGB aces. You see like this one here, if I click, is gonna use like some color space rules that it has already in there, but we don't want that. We wanna force this. So I'm gonna keep this one unchecked. And then you're gonna see here, by default, look what it does. Instead of like just being sRGB, now it's gonna use a utility sRGB texture. By default, it's gonna be converting any JPEG or PNG or whatever it is gonna convert to the correct color space for us to be able to render. Otherwise, it's gonna look too saturated or too dark, you know, but this way it's gonna convert to look exactly like it looked before. So HDRI. So by default in here, it converted the HDRI to linear sRGB, which is really cool. EXR, same thing. I'm not gonna be using TX, so I'm not gonna even add that. Yeah, one thing I noticed, like even like in the class of January, I was actually using a different one here. I was using instead of like linear sRGB, there's a lot in here. I was using utility raw, right? Thinking that I was doing the right thing. But the thing is, like I always noticed that the HDRIs, when you transform it to raw, they come a little bit more saturated than they should. And then it turns out that's because the linear sRGB is the way to go. It really preserves the color of the HDRI. So that's basically what I'm going to be using here. If you need to do stuff like very customized, for example, like you can add a rule here saying, for example, JPEG, right? Well, let's say you just do JPEG like that. So that one shows up like that, and you're going to do like image extension. You're just going to select JPEG, and you can just select anything you want. I mean, like in this case, because it's ACES, you're definitely going to have to use texture, sRGB texture utility like that, right? And then that's basically it. So you don't need to apply output transform to render. You should be able to access it. And everything else here becomes like a default. So all you have to pay attention is to point to that config file first. Make sure this one is off so you can actually have this unlocked, right? And then you can customize whatever you're gonna do there. And then ACCG and then sRGB ACES. Or whatever, you know, if you have a fancy monitor, you maybe gonna have access to some other color space in here. But in the general rule is based like sRGB, right? So once you have all of that set, you just click save. And now we are basically like in ACES mode. See, like already switched in there. So if I click Arnold and then open the Arnold render view here, let's just move this over. The second monitor has a much bigger resolution, so it's always that trick of moving over. Let's see around here. So you see right now, my color space shows in there, right? sRGB ACES. And you have all those other interesting ones, all created by that config that we just set up. So this one's what we're gonna be using by default. The view transform is in here, so by default it's selected, but you can definitely, you know, change to anything you want. So, so for Maya, that's basically what we need for now. I'm gonna make sure that we save this file as our initial file. And when I click Save Scene As, you're gonna notice it's gonna point straight to the scenes folder. And then I'm just gonna do like Asian old lady. And that's I'm gonna name it just like 1. And I'm gonna keep naming. Some people like to save in ASCII because that's basically like text mode, right? So if you're familiar with how things work and the structure of those files in Maya, if you're kind of like an expert, right? If you have like some bug in one of your scenes, in theory, you can just open this Maya ASCII file and just like change the text in there and fix things on your own. But I'm not that experienced, you know. It's like, although I used Maya for 20 years, you know, fixing shit with it, I never learned that. And and the thing is, like, because it's an ASCII file, like a text file, the files are much bigger as well. So I rather use the binary, which is compiled, so I don't have access to the information. If it crashes, and I cannot recover it. But the files are much smaller, and the ASCII files for me are not useful anyway. because I don't know exactly how to fix them. So I just keep like Maya binary in there. So I'm gonna save this one. It's gonna be my very first scene. So it's saved in there. So next time I open this one, it should be all there for me. And then now that we have this set up, which is the most important part, right? Setting up this whole folder, right? Let's talk about ZBrush now. So you see, like we are talking about Maya so far, and then there is a reference folder as well, but we don't have anything ZBrush related yet. So let's just click here and just gonna create a new folder called ZBrush. And everything that's ZBrush related, I'm gonna save in here. Basically like any textures, not textures, the textures are gonna be saved inside of source, but anything that's a Z tool or a Z project are gonna be saved inside of this folder. Anything that's a texture coming from ZBrush are gonna save inside of source images, which is basically what Maya is expecting. And then a third folder I'm gonna create, it's this OBJ folder. So an OBJ folder like that. So if I'm exporting back and forth from Maya to ZBrush, ZBrush to Maya, I'm always gonna send my OBJs in there. Obviously, this is the way I work, but you guys can use any pipeline you're more familiar with. But that's kind of like the way I do it. I create like a folder called OBJs, references in ZBrush, and then everything else is created by Maya. So that's the trick in there. So let's open ZBrush for a second. And I'm hoping actually ZBrush is going to be faster to orbit around. Check this out. Like I was testing this new machine, and temporarily I just added a graphics card that I had before. It was like a Radeon 290X. So like an old card, it's like still good, like 8 gigabytes, but an old card. And ZBrush was working like butter. And then I switched to this GTX 1070, which is a much more modern one, and things got a little sluggish. So I'm not sure what happened, but yeah, I'm gonna be looking at that. So let's see. Personal projects. Let's just open one file here just to show you. So I was poking around this old model here yesterday and today as well. So this is basically what we're going to be expecting. Like you see, like it's going to take, every time you save a HD model, it's going to take some time to save and some time to load. This model here, that's my go-to model, is the one you see every single portrait I put out there. It's basically like it's a chopped head that's watertight. So I have a base, and then it's completely watertight in there, because my plan is to always like print those guys, and I never do, like little busts. Eventually it's going to happen. And so in each one of them is like 70 million polygons of HD geometry. But depending on how you're going to plan your geometry, you're going to be talking about this in the next days. You can get a model that has, let's say, 100 million polygons in HD geometry. But I would not go past, let's say, if it's just a bust, I would not go past like maybe 120 million polygons. Otherwise, it becomes very overkill. Just for you guys to have an idea, when we made those orcs for Warcraft, the movie, I believe the resolution for the entire body was about 70 million polygons, the entire thing, right? And now we're talking about 72 million polygons just for the bust. So that means we have plenty of space for, detailing stuff. So the geometry, yeah, it's still a little stuttery for some reason. I think it's, yeah, the Radeon was actually handling this like butter before. It's kind of weird. It's actually a little better, but it was definitely like stuttering from time to time. So when you create like an HD geometry model, at first you're not going to see any you're sculpting, but then if you enter HD mode, I can do a preview, and here you can see it. It's kind of like creates a little preview and then shows you like all the fine detail and all that stuff, right? So yeah, we're going to be learning this in the next classes, but for now, let's just switch to a couple of preferences in here, because one of the things I didn't cover in the past, like talking about the preferences. So I'm going to go to preferences in here, and then let's look at some stuff, like important stuff. Under memory, so mem, make sure that your HD geometry, HD preview, it's at 50, I believe is the default. And then the max sculptress polygons, I believe it's much lower than this. I actually cranked to 10 million polygons, so I can keep sculpting in sculptress mode for a while without hitting a wall. And then basically like what it says here, it gives the option to go all the way to 100 for HD preview. But then at the same time, if I change this, it gives me a message like this, look. Increase the number of polygons or higher level, blah, blah, blah. You know, it can it prevent ZBrush from working successfully, right? So it kind of gives you the option, but with that disclaimer. So I normally keep it 50 here. And I'm gonna tell you, like, if you have 32 gigs of RAM, you're probably not gonna be able to reach like the maximum amount of polygons you can, but with 64 you can. So like I have 128 in this new machine, but I'm not gonna get even close to that. You're gonna see like as I'm sculpting stuff, you see like this model is fully open and it's HD, right? And I have like 110 gigabytes free still. So it's only using like a very small portion, like 6 gigabytes, right? Actually, this is not the, yeah, it's like active memory 4 gigabytes or something. But yeah, you're definitely not gonna need more than 64 if you're doing like this kind of stuff, you know, HD geometry. But 32, you might be in trouble if you start sculpting stuff and running out of memory. So that's basically for preferences. And then we're gonna go to, let's see what else we can find here. Go Z, language, utilities, thumbnail, camera view, quick save. Quick save is one that I normally crank this because it drives me nuts, like the autosave stuff. Obviously it can save your ass, right? Like because it's auto saving all the time. But because you're working with HD geometry, each one of those autosaves, like first, like something, like every 10 hours, whatever. So I crank this once, and then the maximum amount of quick files, I just reduce it to 10 files max, so it doesn't, you know, accumulate in the hard drive. Otherwise, sometimes you run out of memory. If you have like a SSD card, SSD drive, and then you have like 256 gigs only, sometimes it starts disappearing, and all of a sudden you're completely out of memory, and you don't know why. And it's normally because ZBrush is eating that space pretty good, you know, with those large files. So I'm gonna just delete everything that I have in there, and then I'm gonna keep this way. So and then other than that, let me see if I have anything else here. Quad draw, edit. There was something else, but I can remember later. Oh, I'm turning off my my lightbox at when you launch ZBrush, because by default it opens at launch. So you get lightbox like covering this whole area. So I turn it off as well. But it's up to you guys. And that's basically it, you know. So after you did all this stuff, you just go to your config and just say store config. And that should store for the next time you open ZBrush. And then the other thing you're gonna do here, let's just reset this. By default, your document in here, right? Like you can actually change the resolution. In this case here, I have like, I think like I set like 1500 by 920. And that's for a monitor that's like 1080p, which is my Wacom tablet here. And then it's resize, so you have that. And then thank God ZBrush for the past couple of versions, they put this option there, save as a startup document. So if you click that one, now every time you open ZBrush is gonna have this area for you. Another thing I do here is actually this one. By default, it has that, you know, this kind of range in here. I normally kill that, it's kind of distracting to me. So I just bring it down, and you can even click this back in here and then click something else, you know, pick some other color that's solid. Maybe like a gray that's not too offensive. Something like this from the interface even, you know, something like that. And I can just save it and then just say like save document to startup again. And that's about it. So let's take a look at the other stuff here now. So if you guys are not familiar with ZBrush, you better hurry up because we need to know ZBrush for this class. Otherwise, we're kind of screwed. It's kind of one of the prerequisites, you know. But Maya, I mean, like I'm going to try to guide you guys, even if you don't have experience with Maya and Arnold. I'm going to be showing you all the menus, how it works. But ZBrush, I really expect you guys to really know your stuff. So we are at 10:05 now. You guys have any questions, please fire my way. If something is a little confusing or any questions about the how the class is gonna work. Or oh, by the way, one thing before I go further, we're gonna have reviews not this weekend, the weekend after this one. So basically, like every 2 weeks, we have a review, and those reviews they can last forever. The one I did in January, I did a review session that lasted 6 hours in the morning and another 3 hours at night. So it was 9 hours of reviews in one day. And I feel bad for the people who are actually waiting for the reviews, of the other people before them. But the thing is, like, I really want to give what people need in terms of the feedback. So I try to really give, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes per person. And because it was kind of overpopulated, it was like 35 people in the previous class. That's why I reduced to 25 now, so I can have more time for you guys, and I don't need to stay 9 hours during a review session. But yeah, so that's gonna happen. Let me see. Let me bring my reference here, and you guys feel free to ask me anything.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Is ACES going to make better renders in the end?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, if you read about it, let's see, like if I go to the Arnold, let's see, where did I put it here? Let's try this guy. Let's see if I go to the, not this one. Let's go back 1 time, 2 times. Where is it? This one. Okay. So what they say here is the advantages, right? So the wide range of color and light exposure, predictable image display on wide range of display devices, which is really cool because I have this problem about looking great in my monitor and I post some other place and then it looks like shit. Preserving the full range of highlight, shadows, and colors, simplifying the matching of images from different cameras, more accurate color display with no incorrect color values, working linear color space, no over highlight and clamp on bright areas of the image, and more. So it promises a lot, It's like, and more and more I see people adopting this because it seems like much more powerful. It's like the range is bigger. You can definitely see the difference. And then if you're using like 32-bit images, you can bring to a nice editor, so I can really go to town with the changes. So yeah, I believe it's going to be sweet.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I just wanted to know, like, in terms of homework load, is it expected to like stick with your process each day, or by the end of the week we go on and do our own thing and then submit it the next week after?
Oh yeah. This is absolutely open to you guys. It's like the cool thing about those classes is that people come up with whatever they want to do. It's like, even if it's a project you started before the class, if it's something you want to continue on it, I'm gonna comment on whatever you present to me. It's like, it can be anything. If you're doing like a creature, the best I can, I'm gonna be commenting on how those techniques are being used in that. And even if you're using different techniques, I can comment about the stuff I know from my, experience working in the industry, and try my best to actually help with whatever I can.
I see, but technically it's like whatever we submit you critique on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What happens is that it's very hard. I always put this disclaimer up, so I'm going to do the same here. It starts very easy, So I would say like the first like 2-3 lessons or something, you guys going to be able to follow with me. It's like I'm going to be doing a sketch, so you can sketch your own models. We can start working with that, or if you want to use some model from the past as well. But then I would say like the second week and up, it starts like increasingly getting more difficult to follow, because it involves a lot of things that I have more experience doing, because I'm doing this little pipeline on my own, like for a while, it's like sculpting the pores and all that stuff. And the pores, man, it's the stuff that gets everybody. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. If you can have like many years in the industry, I asked to model one pore, and it seems
Whoa.
like it's the stupidest things. Like, let's just sculpt the pore, and people get in trouble, because it's a very subtle thing that you have to do to be able to create one pore that works. It has to have like the right amount of fall off, so it has to fade into the next pore. The distance between them has to be believable. and the amount of randomness has to be believable as well. And there's a lot of different passes that go on top of them, including the wrinkles and how they blend between wrinkles and pores and stuff like that, that it becomes very tricky, you know? So I believe that's the part that people are gonna get stuck. It always happens, you know? Some of you guys gonna have it more like easily. You're gonna nail like from the get-go. And some of you guys gonna have trouble because it is very tricky. Like I said, it sounds like a very simple concept, but it is tricky because the human eye, doesn't matter if you're a specialist in skin, just by being a human, you're automatically specialized in observing other humans. So if the pores are too big, you sometimes you cannot point what's wrong with it, but you definitely can see that something is off. If they're too small, same thing. If they're too deep, same thing. If you don't have enough variation, same thing. You know, it's like it's a very tricky thing. So at some point, some of you guys are going to start like falling behind a little bit. But I just want to make sure that you guys understand that we are recording the whole thing, so you can definitely revisit as much as you want. And then the thing is, like, I'm gonna keep going because my plan is to always like present like a model that looks kind of finished at the end, but and also trying to help you guys to catch up constantly, right? Like either with those feedbacks that I give you like in real time like this, or Facebook with some questions, you know, if you post them in the group in there. I'm gonna comment about the group, by the way. And then also with the reviews. The reviews is when I really gonna sit with you guys one-on-one and really do like try to pick apart the model in a nice way, because I'm not that that bad. I try to be very helpful and encouraging. But yeah, so since I mentioned the Facebook group, let's make sure that you guys have access to it. So it's called this. So if you go to Facebook, basically this is basically what we use here. It's called Fly Art Matters, right? This is the name of the group. And if you look for it, if you're not part of it, please ask to join, right? There's already someone here asking to join. Perfect, okay, there you go, approve. Alexei is here. Let's see. Well, I'm gonna check, because what happens is that I have to double check this against like all the names I have in my list, right? And I'm pretty sure Alexei is here, but I just have to double confirm.
Yeah, it's me.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, I see you there. All right, there you go. Okay, approve.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I double check against real people, you know, because normally there are people actually asking to join that are not there. So Diego is here, right? And then are you guys here? Alexandra is here. And I have to do like a let's see. I'm trying to check on my list here. Yeah, Alexandra is here. Okay, cool. And then Ty is here as well. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, and yeah, I hope you guys all, oh, there you go, have more people. Okay, Gonzalo is here too. Because in the past I got like a lot of people trying to join, you know, and I was like, oh, that's not fair that I'm gonna be spending time giving feedback for people who are not part of the group, you know. So that's why I have to do like one by one. And then normally I check against the, you know, the school and see if the names are correct and everything. But since you guys are here, it's easy to confirm that way. So in terms of the ZBrush thing now, so approaches for sculpting. You're gonna notice that if you watch like any of those previous classes, there was one time that I started with a sphere. There was another time I started with the cube. Actually, 2 times I started with the cube. And then there was one time I started with this guy here, like from ZBrush. It's a ZBrush model that was like a primitive. This guy here, head plane, right? And then there's another one I started with an actual, like my you know, my go-to model. I started with that. But I'm gonna tell you, like, of all those approaches, to me is like it's always like the final result is what matters. So probably some of them are gonna save you some steps if you start, for example, with the planar face. But I'm gonna tell you, like, I try to favor always like starting from a cube, for example, right? It can be a sphere as well, but for some reason, like the cube, it's almost like it's a complete blank canvas, right? And every time you start with something, even if it's something simple like this head in here, at least like in my personal experience, you guys can be very different. it's almost like your brain gets a little lazy to rethink about proportions, you know. My brain works like that. So if I have that face right there, it's almost like I start sculpting the eyes in the correct spots in there. At least I believe they're correct spots. And then, you know, the chin is already in a certain position, and I try not to change much, because basically like in my brain is like, okay, yeah, it's a believable proportion. I can actually just incorporate more detail in there and in some secondary forms and everything's going to work out, right? But the thing is, like, it carries part of that structure that's not the structure you want for the character. Human faces are so different, right? You just saw this batch of old ladies I show you guys. They are completely different, right? And bone structure is completely different. There's a website you can always check as well. That's called Bone Clones, right? Bone Clones is this website I can open here. So let's see, Bone Clones. So those guys, they sell like replicas of skeletons and skulls, and even like stuff like from prehistoric, you know, this Homo neanderthalis here. Some of them have color. Some of them are like life size. Some are like smaller, you know. But the cool thing is that if you go for like a human, female and male skull, let's say just human skulls. Let's see, human anatomy, human skulls, right? So if you click that one, you're gonna see the different ones. So they have like adult skulls, general. Let's see this one. And you're gonna see those different ones, like the Australian Aboriginal skull. They have like a male Asian skull, human male European skull. They have the African skull. And all of them are very different, right? We have this thing about like, there's even a meme, right? Like, oh, inside we're all the same. We're actually not the same. We are very different. Obviously, like the build, right? Like all the components are the same in terms of, you know, it's like the brain, you know, anything that's the chemical elements in the brain, everything that basically puts us in equal conditions, to, let's put this way. But in terms of structure of what's underneath our skin, they're very different, you know. You compare like those skulls, you put them side by side, you're gonna see how different they are. Some elements, for example, like, you know, this little element right there where your masseter is going to link right here, like in this Asian skull, is very different from this Aboriginal skull in here, for example. You're going to see like the cavity of the nose, how flat the face looks like from certain angles, you know. Obviously, like some elements going to be kind of common. For example, if the eyes are a little bit more square, like the orbital is a little bit more square, that's a male, right? Female is going to have slightly more rounded cavities, and a lot of other stuff, you know. It's like there's the mastoids processing here, where your sternocleidomastoid is going to connect, like between a man and a woman. It's very different, you know. It's like the man supports a stronger muscle in there. The pelvic bone, like a woman has to be able to bear children, right? Like, so it's a bigger opening. The angle is different as well. So the way we walk and the way women walk, like talking about men now, it's different because of that. Obviously, you know, it's like, this is not to say that people out there, they can do whatever they want with their lives, but biologically we're actually very different, you know. And that's just biology. There's no ideology involved. It's just like looking at it, it's very different. So this is a very cool site for you guys to take a look, and even like to buy something. I'm yet to buy stuff from them. I always think about it, and I end up like, and I have some other references in here. I have those little skulls from Anatomy Tools. Actually, they're pretty cool. And I got this ones from Andrew, like a female and a male. Actually, I was teaching classes with him. Like I did like 3 or 4 of them. And then as part of the payment, I always got like some of his products. Pretty awesome stuff. So let's go back in here. Let's talk about that, for example. Like we're going to have to refer to something like this when you're sculpting the group you're intended to, right? So for example, if I go to human anatomy here, and let's see again, human skulls. Let's see, all humans, we have like by gender here. Let's see, adolescent. Let's try like this, all human skulls here. And then, yeah, that's human, male, female. Okay, so that's female. This is Asian economy. What's that? I think it's like a simpler version of the skull, I think. It's kind of like a cheaper plastic, I think they do. But yeah, it's always good to research some of that. It's like just to get the grasp of what the structure is. But you can always ask Google as well. For example, like Asian woman skull, and then get a bunch of examples in here. There's some elongated in there, but definitely like you're gonna have a little bit more of yeah, this one I'm not sure, but I noticed like the orbital bone is especially different. This is a cool comparison right there. But this one is probably a male. Actually, is it? Oh yeah, this is male. Yeah, it's very different right there how much flatter this area looks like. So from the profile, you're definitely gonna get a little bit flatter. So yeah, I'm gonna obviously use the reference I have at hand, and then eventually, it's like starting to compare and see how those landmarks gonna work. Which like for a young model, I would say is not that important because you're just gonna be analyzing like the surface of the model, like it's like surface anatomy that I call, instead of like going for the muscle and bone landmarks. You're actually gonna be paying attention to what the surface is doing, which is basically like the layers of fat and the how full things are. For example, if you look at the reference like this, fat pads in the face, for example. So anything like that, for example, if you look at this, see this guy here, for example, right? So you see like at age 35, and even like younger than this, right? You're gonna get like those fat pads under the skin. They're covering the muscles. So you're not gonna have access to the muscles themselves in there. You're not gonna see things very visible because everything is very, it's covered with those little pillows, right? Of fat in there. And they're pretty much against each other. They are even younger than this, they are even tighter. So it's basically like to the point that you don't see space between them. And then as you age, they start shrinking, shrinking, shrinking. And as you shrink, look what happened with that one. All the landmarks, the bone landmarks and everything start being revealed, right? And then you have like your zygomatic bone muscles in here starting to reveal as well. So that's why when you get to that old lady that we saw before, this old lady right here, it's basically all those landmarks completely visible, right? When she was young, this is all full. Unless she was emaciated or like very, under nutrition, right? And in that case, the fat pad's gonna be shrunk as well. But if she was, let's say like a healthy young person, all those landmarks would not be visible because this would be all covered with those fat pads, right? And then as she aged, look what happened, right? Like you can see the skull perfectly right there, how square it looks like here. Like look at the temporalis line right here. It's like so visible. And then the zygomatic, all this stuff. Look at this sternocleidomastoid, like how thin, frail it is in there. It's beautiful. The clavicle. But yeah, all this stuff is going to be much more revealed. That's why I think it's an interesting thing to model someone old, because you get some of that stuff. Some of the anatomy. It gives this kind of like a visceral kind of feel to it, But then obviously like not so old, right? That's a different kind of approach right there. Still get some of that, but still have plenty of other structures in there covering it. But very, very cool. So the point, the thing that's going to happen now is like, how are we going to decide this, right? How are you going to decide which one I'm going to go for? I'm probably going to start with this lady here. And as it happened with the Native American guy, I started with a specific reference and then evolved. And then I fell in love with another one, for example, like totally different, right? So from this one, I might fall in love with that lady right here, right? And then all of a sudden I'm going to be changing the entire thing. But that's part of the process because I want to create someone kind of unique, and just like making sure that I create someone who is believable, right? Without necessarily creating someone who is a one-to-one copy. So yeah, so we're going to start with this lady here because we have like 35 minutes. So let's do a little sculpting. If you guys are sculpting there, feel free to join, and so we can sculpt together. And I'm going to be doing basically like my process here. It's one thing that I have to add as a disclaimer as well, is that I'm not like a, what did I do here? Why my interface got all funky? Oh, there you go. See, it's not like I use ZBrush. So another thing that I do, I'm not a traditional sculptor, right? And I have some experience like doing a little bit of sculpting in clay. And the thing that some people teach out there is that before you move to the next step, before you move to the secondary forms, you have to make sure that your primary forms are absolutely solid, right? I disagree with that. I mean, like it's impossible to do a different way if you're sculpting traditionally, because you need the base to be perfect, right? It's the most important part, is to make sure that the primaries are spot on. So before you start adding any wrinkles or anything, or even secondary forms, you have to nail those proportions. They have to be perfect. Now, digital art opens that for us, right? We don't need to. We ZBrush since ever, right? Since version 1.55b. That's the version that they switched to 3D. Since that version, which was the first one I used, you can actually sculpt with they implemented the multiple resolutions a little bit later. So like you can switch, right? Like you can subdivide stuff and then go back and forth in resolution. So when you look at my models, I'm gonna go during this whole process, I'm gonna be showing sculpting live with you guys. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna be happy enough with the model before I project it to a topology, but not precisely perfect at all. It's gonna be just an approximation. It's gonna be good enough. And then I'm gonna project that to a base mesh. And then from that point on, I'm gonna start, you know, little by little, like implementing more and more likeness or trying to correct proportions, make sure that the skull has a good shape. And then you're gonna see me getting out of HD, going back all the way to the second level of everything, very low resolution. And then tweaking the whole primary forms again, readjusting stuff. And then once I have that like in a good spot, then I can think about, okay, I can start doing some pores and wrinkles and all that stuff. Because at that point, I know that if I change things, the change is going to be very broad. They're not going to be too localized, you know? So if I need to change, for example, like the whole shape of the face, it's going to be like a big brush I'm going to be using to change that. So I'm not going to be losing the stuff I sculpted. So to sculpt someone like this, let's see, like if I start with a cube. So let's do a cube here. And then just going to create a make polymesh 3D, right? So I can sculpt on it. And then you can start by basically going straight to sculptures, right? I like using sculptures mode. And if you're not familiar with it, the way that sculptures mode works is that if you show like your topology in here, right? And if I'm going to smooth in here, so shift, you see like how it's tessellating everything? If you actually make this brush bigger like this, now it tessellates in a much more broad way. If you make it smaller, it's going to be just very localized. So basically, like you can tessellate stuff like basically like on the fly, just by tweaking the size of the brush itself when you're smoothing, right? So yeah, so basically at this point here, I'm just going to scale it. So to go to scale, you just press any of those guys, like scale, move, or rotate. So you can press Q, W, or T, or E, right? And R, sorry, W, E, R for those guys. And then in this case here, you just click this little guy and just like make it a bit longer like that. For proportions of the face, I mean, like the best thing you guys can do is to just look at the old books of how to draw. You know, it's like you have all those proportions in there for you. For example, like the general rule about having the eyes approximately like in the middle of the face, right? Like, and then build the skull around it. Like the depth of the skull is going to be approximately the same of the length of the face, basically like from top to bottom. It's going to be how deep the skull is going to be. But there are all kinds of variations. You know, it's like you're going to get that as a ballpark. And then everything else is going to be, faces are very different. I mean, like you can get all kinds of stuff. So for this lady here, we can start with very broad stuff. One thing that people joke is like, what brush do you use, bro? You know, what brush do you use, bro? People troll me all the time because I joke about that all the time too. And the brushes I use the most are basically the move brush, right? Those are the magic brushes that are going to make you guys all like rock and roll. So the move brush, I use the clay build-up brush. with a very low setting. So clay buildup, I'm just gonna set up to around 2 or 3 for intensity, maybe 3. And then the move topological. And then I have my own carve brush here, which is basically like, instead of using the dam standard, I basically like, I just create a standard. So click standard, brush clone. So you make sure you have a copy of it before messing up. And then I normally just add this little alpha 39. I already explained this in some of the conference, even the one that's recorded from ZBrush. And just basically make a point for it like that, just make it sharper. And then for the stroke, I just go to the lazy mouse and switch from 0.25 to 0.02. And that's basically becomes a brush I can actually sculpt, like finer lines for wrinkles and things like that, right? So I have those ones saved in here with those names. So I use like those brushes for a lot of stuff, like most of everything, you know, a little bit of inflate here and there, but it's very, very old school, you know. It's like I use very, very crappy stuff. So let's take a look here. So let's start with some move brush. Let's get here to move. And again, like this is going to be very, very crappy. We start just like organizing this forms a little bit. I can start. It's very, the way that I sculpt is very, at least for my sketches, very messy because I'm trying to capture both the primary and the secondary forms in a single scoop, right? So I'm not like too concerned about, you know, how things gonna look neat. Let's see, 50. I just want to get like a ballpark of the proportions first. You can start with anything. You look at each one of my videos, those ones that I record, and each one of them has a totally different approach. I just want to get like the ballpark to start and then start refining it, you know? So it's like there is no rule in here. You can break all the rules. I've seen like, yes.
Do you find it hard to like, get like large proportions and shapes with Sculptress?
What do you mean?
Beginning stages?
I don't know. Like I treat it almost like a clay kind of thing. But do you have a problem with it? Like you?
I guess I'm just like so used to working with Dynamesh.
Oh yeah,
a brand new way of working, right?
Yeah, Dynamesh is basically like yeah, it's like I like the fact that you can actually just decimate stuff on the fly. I think that's
right.
Yeah, it's just like so cool, you know. It's like it's this yeah, I kind of got used to it.
You might be convincing me to try it.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. I feel like how cool it is to just like, you know, keep going with it, like just like sketching. But yeah, try it, man. It's really cool.
For sure.
Yeah. By the way, congratulations, man, on the prize.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah, dude.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, Chris actually won the challenge. If you guys remember that challenge I ran, he was the guy who modeled the, what's the name of the chef again?
Gordon Ramsay.
Yes, as a pig.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly fitting for him. So congratulations, man.
Thanks.
Beautiful work, by the way. Like all your, especially like the renders you do, like really, really nice stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. You're too kind, man. You're too kind. Even in your when you're congratulating me, what you said, because no. I've already watched a couple of your courses, and I've already learned an insane amount. So
oh, cool, man, awesome.
There's always room to learn, right? Always learning and growing.
Oh yeah, dude. No doubt about it. So you see, like at this point here, I made a potato, right? So it's like this is gonna be my potato lady. And then you see, like, it's a very simple model here. There's nothing in there. So now we're going to be playing with some proportions in here. And then because I'm using like just a single reference with no like profile or anything, I might actually adopt some profiles from a similar kind of structure at some point. But at this point here, I'm going to be using my my internal library in here to kind of define this a little bit more. What I mean by that is that over time, as artists, we develop like a vocabulary, right? Like it's a vocabulary of preferences we have when it comes like to proportions and things like that. So if you go to a museum, for example, and you look at the work of like many different people, many different artists, you're gonna have, for example, like over time, if you do this a lot of times, you're gonna start assembling like your own favorite set of features in the human face. So when you're trying to idealize and create someone who doesn't exist just by using proportions, right? You're gonna start like, okay, I'm gonna go for that nose that now it's my favorite because it's a combination of all those noses you observed, and then in your mind, you actually, for some reason, you pick that favorite because it has an interesting shape, maybe like a little bit more square, maybe the tip has a little bit more of an interesting form in there. And then over time, you develop like your own style, you know? And then that's gonna basically like every time you try to sculpt a model that's a non-existent person, just based roughly on a person that exists, definitely something is gonna end up like ending in your model. That's something that's very unique of yours, you know? And I think that's a great exercise to escape from the pure likeness. I think that's why I'm doing more and more of these models without being attached to the likeness. First, because the likeness is very hard, right? It's not because I'm trying to escape from that. It's because like it is hard to the point that people are gonna judge too much and then forget about looking at the other qualities. You know, it's like in the model, especially the stuff that's very unique of yours. You know, so it's got the kind of stuff like you know, it's like you look at when you see like a beautiful singer, right? And you start seeing people talking about this beautiful singer online, and then everything becomes just about the look and not so much about the singing itself, which is the part that's more interesting in there, right? So when I do this kind of stuff, I want people to actually see the intention. You know, it's like what I'm doing in there, instead of like simply judging like the I would say like the technical aspects of it. You know, technical aspects are very important, obviously, but so like at this point here, I'm just sketching like very roughly. It's almost like starting with kind of like a low relief kind of, you know, thing here, just like putting some forms in there, but without too much concern. So for example, like for the muzzle, I can start with building a little bit more of this form and just like smoothing it out. And I can go with my carve brush here. I can start like, remember, like this is basically like digital clay at this point, right? So if you need to, you can actually sketch on it, you know, just do like a lower resolution here. But for example, like nothing stops you from creating like things like that, you know, it's like just drawing on your model in there. Very basic stuff, you know, and then obviously everything is going to be built afterwards. But you can start like with very basic stuff. All this stuff here, you're going to be able to move with the move brush later. So like there is no rules in here at this point, you know. You can really go to town like, oh, I hate this as a bug in ZBrush. If you're using lazy mouse, that happens all the freaking time. So yeah, like everything I'm doing here, if you look at the previous classes, it's probably different from what I did in the previous ones, you know. It's just because I try to just like be very free with the way I'm sculpting stuff. She has a very interesting, the lips here are very interesting. But I think yes.
I'm just wondering, do you better sculpt it in neutral pose and then afterwards like sculpt the expressions in layers?
I do use
straight go for the expression.
Yeah, I don't use layers because of the HD geometry, you know. I kind of like I get stuck on no layers. Yeah, that's the problem with the HD geometry. It's one of the limitations. I'm gonna be talking about it probably like tomorrow when we start talking a little bit more about that. But it's very limited when it comes to that, you know. You cannot make it work with layers. I mean, like you can try like a couple of different approaches. For example, have the model as a copy and then have that one known HD, and then you can just like iterate on it, and then you can actually export when you need back to you know, and just re-import into your HD model and use that as a buffer, you know. So you can like maintain basically like two models as long as you have the base mesh like finished, then you can do that. One thing that I used to do as well, like when I needed layers, I would create like multiple subtools, and then each one of them I would add like different stuff. For example, a pass just for displacements, and then another pass like just for veins, you know, something like that. But yeah, like in terms of flexibility, HD is really not the best for that, unfortunately. So you see right now I'm just kind of sculpting just like it's a little ball, right? Like there's nothing. So the way I normally do this sculpting with this clay buildup, you're gonna see I'm gonna do like very, very large passes like that, like go like with the very, very long lines, and then go over it in the opposite direction. And just using the pressure sensitivity, just go and just like brush the surface like that. I mean, like at this point here, I can start looking for, you know, some landmarks. For example, I can establish this line here. Come to the side. I can establish a little bit more of that. Try to capture a little bit of this expression.
Sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, of course, man.
I have one small question. Can I start with this mannequin?
Can you start with what?
Mannequin.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, anything you need, man. It's like there is one point that we're gonna need the forms to be very stable at some point, and to get to that point, like anything you need, you know, it's like if you're more comfortable. I'm actually using this the cube. The only reason is to actually make sure that everything is completely you know, it's a brand new model. I mean, mannequin, it doesn't have a face. You're definitely gonna get the body proportions and everything, but it's totally cool with me. Yeah, it's gonna work fine for you too.
Because in my model, I have hands also. So I was little wondering what is the best.
Oh, okay. So tell me more about your model. So for example, like you're gonna have the hands, but are the hands gonna be visible? Like for example, like
it is like this. So it's in printing mode. So
with clothes.
Yeah, little bit clothes on the face. It's actually Mother Teresa. So
oh, okay,
I just
yeah.
want to give a respect.
Yeah. So I would say like if you're sculpting it like that, you can use just the head and then just like model, for example, like the parts of just the hand and a little bit of the forearm. You can do that way and then cover with the clothes. Or you can go for the model with everything attached. But in that case, you're gonna need more polygons to accommodate all the detail, you know?
Yeah.
So for example,
so
like
best way is
yeah, maybe like the upper body, maybe you would go for that.
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
What do you think? Like you would go for the upper body or?
Yeah, I think first I will start the way you're showing, then I will add the hands as a separate subtool.
Okay, you can do that too. Yeah, yeah, that works too.
Yeah, I was just wondering how the easiest way. In the same time, I was thinking about UDMs and all, how it will work, and because a lot of so
we're definitely going to be talking about the UDIMs very soon because we need to plan how many of them we're going to need to be able to accommodate all the detail, right?
Yes.
We're going to have to do some calculations in there, which is like, you really need to plan that. So let's see. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, we're going to definitely go through all that stuff. Just to dig this lady's face here. It's like, this is the kind of part, right? Like that you are just like, if I'm not talking, I'm probably going to have like some music going on and just like going to go to town with just
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
So I have a question. Like I'm planning on my model to have scars or damages. And I was wondering what is like a good reference point, because I'm pretty squeamish when it comes to those things. When I worked on like zombie games, I would just like look at Walking Dead stuff. But like what do you actually use for like hyper realistic stuff?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, like I remember like I was working. What was that? It was like a Pacific Rim, and we had to model like some. There's a scene that he chops the otashi with some, some propellers, and my supervisor was Joe Knoll. No pressure at all. No pressure at all. And then Joe Knoll, he was like, "Oh, here I found some references you guys can use." And dude, it was like pictures of people who actually got hit by propellers of boats and stuff.
Oh no.
actual dude, horrific stuff, and we had to, you know, buckle up and look at all that crap. But yeah, man, I'm sorry, yeah, but I would say like sometimes you have to do, you know, the sacrifice and.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So is there? I'm afraid to ask, but is there a good source for stuff like that?
That's a good question. We can all look together, I guess.
Oh no.
Yeah. I'm so you don't need to suffer alone, right? But yeah, dude, like that's the kind of stuff that it's pretty hardcore.
And as well, in terms of planning, if we can't use layers for scars and whatnot, what is usually, so you're just suggesting on like having multiple duplications of the mesh?
Yeah, I mean, like I sculpt. So when I started doing those portraits, my intention was to actually pay homage to all those guys who did like traditional work before. See, like how flat the face it is. You're gonna have to start pulling things out. For example, like guys like Rick Baker and Dick Smith and all those guys, and those guys are just doing traditional stuff with no access to anything else. So like no CG back in the day, right? So I kind of like when I did the portrait of Dick Smith, my intention was to actually pay tribute in a way. And I thought about like, okay, so what was the approach to hyper detail a face, for example? And there was no, you know, layers or anything. The only thing you have available is basically like, okay, it's clay, and then you're gonna use some stamps, and you're gonna start like, you know, creating the thing like from scratch. And then I stuck with that idea about making everything kind of manually. So that's why it doesn't bother me, but I really understand what you guys say when you use layers and things like that. So the same way I mentioned, like you're free to do, you know, it's like to create your own little pipeline. In this case here, when I show how I do stuff, it's normally like a very, very, very traditional kind of approach. You know, it's like everything is without layers, and it's like if I need to change things, I normally like erase, redo. But I know it's not the smartest, but it's definitely something that challenges me. You know, and over time you get better at planning things, and eventually it just works. You know.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry, I don't have all good news for you guys. Yeah, I'm a little bit weird when it comes to this stuff, man. Let's see this guy here.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I see on the plannings here in the calendars that it's from Monday to Thursday.
Yes.
So the reviews will be on Thursdays then.
Next the X hours, please upload everything to the Google Drive, and then I'm gonna get everything that you guys post in there, and I'm gonna be downloading kind of like overnight, and then in the morning you should have all the files available, you know. But yeah, it's gonna be all that way.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm gonna start sculpting a little bit. You see like how this shape splits in two here, right? So I'm gonna be just adding, and you see like I'm not too concerned about proportions just yet. I'm just gonna be adjusting things. I'm just incorporating some stuff that I kind of consider like part of her personality in there. Just adding some of that, but without too much concern at this point.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yeah. So for me, good news is that I have the similar wrinkles in my models. So.
Oh, nice. There you go.
As soon as you mentioned that we'll be doing female, so I have chosen that Mother Teresa has very nice form to learn a lot of things. So,
oh, there you go.
And before that, when you didn't announce that you will be doing female, I have chosen Mahatma Gandhi. So I had like, okay, I need to learn something. So that these are the very complicated stuff, that wrinkles, and because we can do a lot of stuff like a creature thing, but when it comes to very realistic, it's very, very difficult.
Oh yeah, it is.
So,
but you know what? Like we can do in a way that it's kind of like overwhelming when you see a model that has lots of complex forms and everything. But if we stick with the plan, you know, it's like, and you start like breaking down all the forms into tiny little pieces, all of a sudden things start making more sense. So yeah, it's a matter of like just going like step by step, you know, and then things just work.
Thank you. Let's see.
Yeah. So this brush here is called the H polish brush, is another one that I use. And this one is kind of useful for making those planes a little bit more visible. So for example, like if you start to simplify the face, right, you're going to start seeing like different planes. For example, you're going to have a plane on the side here. Let me just increase the intensity there. So you can actually just like really use this brush to really define it. And then, for example, like around here on the side, I can actually make a little plane right here as well. And then every time you need to chisel something, you know, it's like just to define some of those planes better, you can use this brush. It'll be very, very interesting sometimes. You get some interesting results. But then overall, what I'm going to keep doing is basically like using the move brush and just this little carve brush. The carve brush, almost like the name says, right? Like carving the surface and then trying to kind of like keep things a little bit more anatomical. So for example, like you see the muzzle in here, it's very simple, right? I just started it. So there's not a lot going on in there. But if I go to my move brush, I can start like digging this area here deeper a little bit. Start forming this area here. So this goes in, this goes out. Then I can start doing the same with this. So for example, the muzzle is gonna have to have more volume in here, right? So I'm gonna bring this one in little by bit, little by little. I'm gonna bring this one out. You see it's a little square in there. It has to look kind of like an arch because you have like teeth underneath. So we're gonna have to have a little bit more of that. The nose is gonna have to, you know, get a little bit more. It's a fight, right? I'm gonna have to find out what's the right amount of depth that I'm gonna have for the eyes, and then in relation to the nose, in relation to the forehead, and for example, like the brow here, probably gonna have to come out a little bit more. And then slowly we're gonna start building some of that into the model. And like I said, I mean, like at some point I might simply abandon this model here, just like fall in love with another one and just decide we'll go with it. But at this point here, I call like just like a kind of like an experimentation, you know. I'm trying to, as I sculpt those things, little by little, I start like trying to see the character in there. And if I see there is potential for the character, I go for it. If I see it's just like, yeah, you know, not feeling it, I might actually stick and try a little bit harder. But then sometimes it's just like, you know what, like maybe that's not the character for her. And then I just switch to something else, you know. Obviously proportions and all that stuff, I'm gonna have to review as I go as well. And thank God that we are not working just like a, you know, stuck with the traditional approach, because at this point here, whatever goes, right? I can just go here and just pull this entire face up if I want to, right? And that's basically what happens. Sometimes I sculpt things and get too compressed. One thing that fixes the model for me a lot is to actually bring the eyes more under the eyebrows. So for example, like if the model looks like this, sometimes just by moving it like this, sometimes it gets a little more natural because you open this distance between this and this, right? When you're sculpting likeness, pure likeness, you have to actually keep measuring things, right? So basically like this distance between, for example, the corner of the eye in here in relation to the nose itself, right? Like the tip of the nose, this distance between this and the mouth itself, right? You're gonna get like all kinds of different proportions you're gonna have to work with. The nose, for example, here is very wide. Slowly you're gonna have to pull it back, you know, and make things more proportional. And obviously, when you're sculpting stuff like from just eyeballing things, it takes a long time to get things to look correct, you know. And I try to stick with this plan because I'm always trying to challenge myself, like in terms of the forms, right? Like how can I approach that and get something believable at the end? But then, you know, it's like if you really get in trouble and you're not getting your model to go anywhere, then one thing that I use, but this is just like last instance, right? If I would say that probably I use this like maybe twice, but for the most part, I get away with just like winging it. But you can use the see-through thing here, right? And then if you can do something like that. So for example, you worked on it for a long while, right? And then all of a sudden, the model is not quite there. and then you don't know why. So for example, like if I'm comparing her here, if I match, for example, the chin in there, right? Let's see, chin in relation to the mouth. So chin in relation to the mouth here looks pretty okay. The nose can be a little bit more, you know, narrow. The eyes can change the position slightly, right? This is the kind of stuff you can do later on to actually help yourself, right? But in this case here, I'm in the search of, you know, trying to find the forms on my own. So I'm just gonna completely ignore this, and I'm gonna try not to use that at all up to the end. And then if I'm really in big trouble, then I'm probably gonna cheat a little bit with that, which is not quite a cheat, right? Like you have to keep in mind that if you look at someone modeling, for example, for Madame Tussauds, right? Some of those models are pretty awesome, some suck. But the ones that are awesome, you see like the making ofs, these people, they have the actors in the studio, right? They are actually copying their faces right there in real time. And they are using calipers and actually measuring all the time, right? So they're gonna go with the caliper, gonna go like nose to eyebrow, right? Tip of the nose to the bottom of the chin. They are measuring everything and transferring those measurements to make sure that they make something believable, right? So you can go completely romantic about it and just say like, okay, I'm proud and I'm not gonna use any of that, which is my stupid mistake that I do most of the time. And then at the risk of not having anything to look completely realistic, you know, I don't think any of my models look completely realistic from the proportion standpoint, you know, because of, you know, everything is eyeballed. There's no comparison to, you know, someone who actually uses scans for stuff, you know, there's no comparison. I'm never going to be able to do that with just like by eyeballing, you know. But the advantage is that I always going to have more style, you know, in the model, and I rather have that than a perfect model, to tell you the truth. Because I mean, like that's what we do, like in our professional jobs, right? We work at you know, at the studio, for example, and you're gonna get access to all the scans and all possible textures and everything ready to go, you know. And then the whole reason I started those classes is for me to challenge myself, you know, and do things that make me uncomfortable, because otherwise there's no reason, you know. Yeah, not trying to prove a point, like just really trying to have fun, you know, and being among artists like you guys, you know, it's like really inspires me. And as you go, for example, further with your models, you're going to start kicking my butt, and then I'm going to be forced to do better as well. And that drives me, you know, it's like, it's really cool. I think it's a great, healthy interaction, you know, and not a competition, because I feel like we are doing like a group study here, you know, but definitely cool, you know. It's like, I love this experience, and I would absolutely switch from doing professional work for the movies to just teaching classes if this was completely sustainable, you know. But at this point, I'm still not sure. I'm doing this for like since May of last year, and yeah, the money is really good. It's just like, I don't know for how long they're gonna have interest, you know, how long people are gonna be interested to learn portraits, because at some point it's gonna become, you know, maybe too repetitive, and then I'm gonna have to actually find something else I can actually have fun doing, maybe like, I don't know, creature, whatever it is, you know. But for me to teach creature, I already said in another class, like I would have to be completely confident that I can actually pass the knowledge without feeling that I'm cheating people, you know. Just like, I see people sometimes, like they use their name and stuff to teach stuff, but without actually having the knowledge. And I don't want to be that person, you know. It's like, I want to feel like if I'm teaching something, I know what I'm talking about, even if it's within my own context of how I create my stuff. But at least I'm confident with my own process, you know. I don't want to cheat people into doing something like that I'm pretending, you know. So that I would not feel good about it. Let's see. Let's go just like carve those little eyes a little bit deeper in there. We are just on time, but I'm gonna keep going a little bit further here just to get a little bit more of that. And another thing that's gonna happen, you're gonna notice, is that those first classes, those first couple of lessons, while I'm just exploring, right? Exploring the model and trying to find out the soul and all that stuff. What happens is that I post this at the end of the night before I go to sleep. And you're gonna see the model is gonna look more advanced than what it is right now. Because the way it works is like this. I have to actually save this recording, right? So as soon as I hang up here, it's going to start saving in my hard drive. And then it's going to process the whole thing. It's going to take like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. And then I basically like upload to the website. And then the website has to recompress the whole thing. So if I upload stuff around 11, which is now, probably like it's going to take about an hour to an hour and a half just to process the entire thing and have the videos available for you guys. So during that time, I'm going to be working on this model here. So probably like if you look, it's like a little later tonight, you're going to see this model with a little bit more advanced. But the cool thing is that I'm recording this entire session in here, which, oh man, that's a good thing that I have to check. If I go too high in resolution with my Sculptress, sometimes it gets limited in here, and then it doesn't save the entire session. So let's just check for now if I have everything all the way to the beginning. Yeah, so I have this guy here. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna save this with the history. So at least I know I have up to this point, and then I can actually just attach the file later. But for example, we can go to File. Everything I save, I don't save as a tool, okay? I save as a project. So I go to File, because the project saves the startup, saves the material and all that stuff, It basically opens exactly where it stopped. It even saves like the subtools in here. So in that case, I can actually get rid of this guy. So if I have something loaded, you can just go to Subtool, and you can just say delete all. And then you go back and you have just your little guy in there. So save, undo history, make sure that one is on. Then when I save, this file is gonna look bigger, but at least gonna have all the steps in there. So that's basically what I'm gonna be saving for you guys to see. I'm gonna post a time lapse. So you're gonna see from this point, like from the cube, all the way to whatever I land, it's like whatever part of the model I am at that point. So Asian lady. Okay, that's gonna be my first one. So it's gonna be a little big because of that, but I can generate the time lapse. So if you guys wanna know how to do that, I can show you, since we are already a little bit over, I can show you this stuff before I can continue on that. And basically, this is how I create my time lapses. You know that by default, ZBrush just like orbits all over the place, right? Like it repeats all the camera movement and all that crap. I normally try to keep just like in one position, either like a 3/4 like that or a front view, whatever, is easier to illustrate. So I basically I do a movie, and then you have a bunch of things here. So the title image, you can just basically like bring everything to 0, unless you want to add like the ZBrush logo, right? That's up to you. Overlay image, same thing, it's just like opacity all the way to 0. And then under the timeline here, actually not timeline, the modifiers, it's a bunch of things in here. So spin frames, I don't need that because I don't want to spin around anything. I don't want, so I can keep just one. The position I'm going to bring to 0. Size can bring to 0, orientation to 0, right? And then the quality at 5, and that should be good to go. And then another thing I do is this: instead of like using the window, I use document and then large, right? So that means that it's going to take this document in here as the entire area. And then once you have all this stuff set, so basically like, yeah, so you can actually turn off this one. This is just for the turntable. And then this is all 0, blah, blah, blah. This is all 0 in there. Then you just have to do like, you go to the first frame. So you click like all the way to the first frame, and then you just say movie, and you say forward history. And that's gonna record like a time lapse for the whole thing. You can do it backwards from here as well, right? Just use that video if you want, or reverse it. You can do that as well. But yeah, that's basically it. So again, guys, this is just like an introduction class. So tomorrow we're gonna be refining those forms. And then I'm gonna go more into detail about like, okay, primary forms. So let's say, it's almost like you have to break down the model into lots of different creatures, right? So basically like one eye is going to become a creature. It has its own set of primary, secondary, and tertiary forms at the end. Same for the lips, we're going to have all those things. And then at the end, it forms this major creature, but it's all like, if you break down, it's like each one of those parts can be as complex as you want to make them, And then the subtleties are very important, it's what really sells the it's like the complexity of the skin, how it's sagging, how it's compressing against stuff. As soon as I start adding more wrinkles, I'm going to be trying to describe, it's like, okay, this is happening here because there's a collision of two major forms, and then you get this crease in the middle. And then because there's this collision of forms, there is a soft tissue that's going to be kind of bulging out between the two of them. So there's a lot of very interesting stuff, when it comes like to define those forms. Right now, I'm just like kind of winging it to get something to start talking about. But definitely we're going to get more into detail, it's like specifically about like the, redefining the primaries a little bit better. And then definitely the secondary forms are probably like my favorite ones, because it's kind of like this link between the wrinkles and pores and the primary forms, right? I think a major mistake that a lot of us do or make is that we are happy with the primary forms sometimes, and then we jump right into the secondary, into the tertiary forms, and we start like adding wrinkles and pores and all that stuff. And then the secondary forms never show up, It's okay if you start adding tertiary forms as long as you go back and you start incorporating the secondary forms. But it happens a lot, It's like you see like the primary forms are in place, but you don't see any major form change before the pores and wrinkles. It's almost like you're missing the hierarchy, Try to imagine like a fractal. It starts big and gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's almost like you're going from big to very tiny without going through the slightly smaller forms, like the major wrinkles, major folds in the face, And then that's a huge mistake. I mean, like it really messes up with the realism and the veracity of the whole thing, But I hope you guys enjoy it. I mean, we have plenty of those coming up, and it's going to get, I guess, more fun as we go forward. And more difficult as well, increasingly. But I'm going to try to do my best to be as clear as possible. You can tell that English is not my first language, but I try my best. And a pleasure having you guys, and thank you so much for supporting me, Awesome.
Chris, can I ask you a real quick question?
Yeah, please.
So like you just did with the like getting rid of the ZBrush logo thing. Is there a way to easily do that with Arnold? You don't have to demonstrate. I'm just wondering.
With Arnold?
You have to jump through all the hoops that you find on YouTube?
Huh. What do you mean like with Arnold? Like it's
So if you try and do like the equivalent of like the batch render, it like shows up with like this Arnold in the background.
Oh, you mean like you're using like a kind of like a student license or something?
I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because like I mean, like to get rid of logos, I think it's just when you use like the full version, I believe.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
I pay for Maya, so I don't.
You're paying for Maya?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you shouldn't get that. I mean, like that's weird because it comes back. Yeah, it comes packaged with Maya nowadays, so it should be completely out of that, I guess, if you're paying subscription. That's basically what I'm doing too, and I don't get any logo.
Okay.
Or before you do,
more.
Yeah, before you do that, try to upgrade it. It's like go to that link and try to upgrade your Arnold, because it's very important to have like the random walk 2 available for you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I do have all that, which is odd, but all right, I will. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do a little research too, because I never heard of that. That's like unless you're using like a student version, I know that happens. But if you're using the full, man, that's weird. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys, you have a good. Hey.
Chris, can I shoot you a quick question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I wanted to check how soon after the class do these recordings become available? Because I was for some reason not able to view what's going on. So yeah.
Oh, you're not able to. You guys are seeing it, all right? You guys are.
Yeah. I'm able to see the a live session, but I wanted to see how soon after this
will
be available.
Yeah, so the way it works is like this, like it finishes in here and like I said, like it records and then compresses. So I would say like if I upload at 11, around 12:30, it's probably like okay, it's like an hour and a half. And in all those months teaching those classes, I never missed like a posting in the same day, you know, because I'm concerned about people who have actually tried to watch stuff before they go to work. And we are all over the place, all over the world. Yeah. So I want to make sure people have access as soon as possible. So I would say, like, to be safe, between like 2 and 2.5 hours from now, we should be good.
Sure. Yeah, because I don't think I'll be able to attend the live classes because I'm over in Sydney and it's in the middle of the day.
Oh.
So so I didn't take into account I think the daylight savings kicked in and it's right in the middle of the day. Yeah. So,
and
so I was just hoping I can catch it.
They just changed it here. Yeah. They just changed this weekend for us. And that sucks.
Yeah. But that's okay. I can as long as I can catch it soon after, that's fine. Yeah.
Oh, you will. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. That's
all
good.
Right.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah, that was awesome watching you work, though. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Okay. Thank you so much, and I see you guys tomorrow.
Hey,
and then please post on Facebook. You know, it's like if you have any questions, anything. I know that the group is growing there, and it's getting harder for me to reply to everybody. But I try my best. You know, it's like it's. Now I'm gonna ask you guys if you can post just in one single spot. That would be ideal, because sometimes I get like private message on Facebook, private message on Instagram.
I was gonna ask that.
No, not only you, man. It's like I get like from a couple of people actually, and it's hard for me like to keep the focus because I'm so terrible with private message. But if it's in the group, at least I see in there it's registered, and I kind of force myself to to go back in there. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.